Well, good day, everybody. This is Dr. Doug Pernikoff and my wonderful co-host, Miss Cindy Vickers, and we're here with Dr. Doug's All Things Animal. And today's going to be a fun day because we're going to talk all day about puppies, training, selection, any topics that we can put together that'll be fun, and hopefully you're going to enjoy this. We have a special guest, Leo Hasanaj.
Hasanaj.
I'm sorry. No, and he is a lead trainer at Kennelwood in South County, but we wanted to let you know there's about 7 locations for Kennelwood around the city, and you can find them at kennelwood.com. They have boarding, training, daycare, grooming, and a little bit of retail as well. It's probably as it relates to training mostly. But it's a great facility. They've been around forever. They're well noted in the community. And it's great that we have you here, Leo. You're going to help us with this discussion today. Cindy, of course, has many, many years of training, and she's going to help direct a lot of that part of it. But I thought we'd start the beginning of the show and talk about puppy selection, because until we get the puppy in the house, we can't start training him. And there's a lot of ways to approach this from a veterinary aspect and from other kinds of aspects of selection. But I think the first thing that's important is, what does it cost to have a puppy at least that first year? Because a lot of people go and emotionally buy something or acquire something or even adopt. And then they realize, oh my God, there's this and that, these costs, those costs. And pretty soon you can rack up, I'm guessing somewhere between $250 and $500 the first year. Some people say up to $1,000. But that includes things like repeat vaccinations as the puppy's growing up into a mature, immunologically mature animal, around 16 weeks or so. Repeat fecal exams, and when necessary, deworming. Of course, spay and neuter is really important. A lot of people think it's important to microchip. I do too. And little things like clipping nails or just addressing problems that arise during that early part of puppyhood. Cindy, do you have any experience?
Just the things that you need to buy for them to have a puppy in your home. I mean, I think it's standard to say that you need a crate or you need a pen for them to be in, and then there are food bowls and food and a leash and collars, and you have to think about baiting them.
How often is it? I'm not a groomer, but I've been around groomers my whole professional life. But I'm always concerned that a lot of people try and translate what we do for ourselves in bathing all the time. And I always tell people, be careful that most dogs don't need that kind of regular.
I'd like to hear Leo weigh in on this, but actually I think what happens is they don't get bathed enough, so that people don't really want to touch them. The groomers will bathe their dogs every week or every 2 weeks. My son bathes his dog every 2 weeks, and it just makes her completely pleasant to be around. They just don't smell. You get rid of a lot of the shedding. So some of the things that makes people not want to be with their dogs as much and not touch them as much is because they're shedding so much and they're stinky, and you get that bad feeling on your hands. So I think you better give them a bath.
But how about drying them out, and then would that be breed specific, the suggestions?
I think a lot of times with like dogs and grooming them, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I hear people complaining about, oh, he sheds too much and all this kind of stuff, but I don't think a whole lot of people, like Cindy was saying, keep up with it, and then they always end up complaining about, he's still shedding, he stinks, he's, this, that, and the other, but a lot of people really don't take that initiative to do anything about it to begin with.
That's a good point. So you were talking about some of the cost. I think that makes sense. You go to the pet shop, there's so many great things, there's a million products, and it's so easy to walk by and go, I got to have one of those, I got to have one of those.
Yeah.
For instance, toenail clippers. I think it's really important that you go to your groomer or your vet first, learn how to do that, find out what they suggest is the best product or one or two different products that are good, and then take it on. But to just, out of nowhere, just start clipping nails, I think you're going to hurt your dog.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if they do it anymore, but I worked at Kennelwood for many years.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I did the boarding training. I taught a million classes. I did a lot there. But one of the things we taught in puppy class was all our classes was how to trim a dog's nail. I mean, we took nails. We spent a lot of time on that.
I think that's really
awesome.
good.
And I quicked my dog's nails the very first time when I was taking class, and I was like, I wanted to run a knife through my heart. I was devastated.
Is that as bad as spraying yourself with anal gland solution? First year veterinarian, which I did, unfortunately.
But that doesn't hurt you. You know, you're hurting
emotionally, I was very hurt.
distressed. Yes.
There are some other things I suggest to people. They come up to us and they say, what about what should I do when I go to search out a puppy? And, the first thing I do is I try and talk to them. And again, trainers and veterinarians, anybody, groomers, they all know a lot about these dogs. You want to make sure you pick a pet that's going to fit your household.
Yeah.
You've got young kids, adult kids, is it just older people? And all that plays a role. And I think a veterinarian or a trainer can really help you find out, is there a specific breed that I need to worry about? Are there breeds that have specific medical issues? And there are, in fact.
Yeah.
Do I want a giant breed? Do I want a small breed? Do I want one that sheds, that doesn't shed? So again, I think that it's really important not to go out impulsively. I think you do your due diligence. You really look closely. And the other big rule I always say is never go shopping with your kids the first time.
Yeah.
Because the first puppy you see is the first puppy you take home.
Yeah.
Well, what are some of like the big medical issues that get assigned to certain breeds? I mean, I know that poodles.
Well, there's books on this and stuff like that.
But if there's some like big ones, like skin issues with bulldogs and
any of those dogs, but
smashed-based
also you think about Cocker Spaniels, one of the most popular breeds, and what do they have? They have all kinds of allergies, eyes, ears, skin. Yeah. They get a lot of oily skin. You think of big, giant breeds that are going to be more prone to hip dysplasia.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So another part that comes out of this is you need to ask the breeder or the shop or wherever you're going, even the rescue. Most of the time they don't know any history on these rescue dogs, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. But if you have a sense of what that dog looks like, is it wire-haired, is it long-haired, is it short-haired, whatever, that might give you some indication of breed relationships, unless you can go further and do testing with genetic testing. But the whole idea, again, is try and understand as much about what you're getting into with a particular breed. Ask those people. Now, you're depending on the breeders to be honest and whatever, the source to be honest. But I always ask them to make sure and get the name or talk to the veterinarian of that breeder or that source. Huh. And if you have your own veterinarian, call them and kind of research. Are these good people? Are they responsible to their pets? And most vets aren't going to jeopardize their reputation for any specific person, even though they may make money from those people. So,
well, part of puppy selection, if you were going to choose a purebred dog, and that's where you can get information, qualified breeders and breeders with integrity give you lots of information. They're generally pretty particular about where their dogs go, and they will educate you generally about what are the potential health problems, and they'll let you know what kind of screening they've done for those health problems. They also like to talk about their dogs. They like to tell you about the temperament of their dogs. If it's a dog that requires a great deal of grooming, they usually are pretty strict about you knowing what's really involved with keeping this dog properly groomed. Can you do it? Do you have the money to do it? Do you have the time to do it? So I think you get, again, a responsible breeder generally gives you a lot of information about that breed because they really know the breed and they're careful when the puppies go home. Yeah. But
Leo, I was going to ask you a question, and Cindy, you can chime in here as well. But so I've been in many situations where I go and look at these beautiful puppies, and I've gone with friends who are trying to pick a puppy, and I'm trying to help them. And there's always this discussion about, do you take the one that's sleeping? Do you take the one that's coming right up to you? And of course, you have a spot moment to look into the life of this puppy. Mm-hmm. So you really don't get representation all the time unless they tell you more. But how do you address that?
I really like that you brought that up because the way that I pick puppies, and I'm actually hopefully going to be getting a puppy here of my own in June or July. I'm going to hopefully getting a Belgian Malinois. Wow. I know, and those dogs are super. They can be really, they're really hyper dogs, and they need a lot of training, and they need a lot of stimulation and everything like that. And so I'm also going to be doing specific things with it, like dog sports. So I'm going to be looking for specific temperaments and dispositions. But selecting a puppy, I think a lot of times what people should do is I think obviously take your time with it. Really get to know the litter, get to know what, see which one matches your personality, and, just really read each puppy's personality, because they will all be different. And it is a little bit harder to see that at 8 weeks old or however old they are when you get to see them. But at the same time, take your time with it and don't rush it. Cause
so you think you should repeat visits to the opportunity?
I don't think that's a bad idea, because if anything, you're just picking out the puppy that you're going to feel most comfortable with. And then you're not going to, let's say, I've had a couple of clients 3 months down the line, and they always joke about, maybe, maybe I shouldn't have gotten her. Or they talk about the cute little brother that they saw and they thought about also. And so, sometimes, a lot of people, they might have like doubts about the puppy they got. So, I really do agree. Just take your time with it. Really know what you're going in there, what you want. Mm-hmm. And, kind of like Cindy was saying, reputable breeders will tell you everything they need to know about that dog.
So let me ask you, you say when you pick a Malinois, which is a dog that's probably the most popular dog to use for protection training and all the Mondio sports.
Yes.
What specifically would you look for in that puppy that makes you go, that's the one I want to take into the ring or to compete with?
Personally, generally what I would want to look for is obviously that little more confident dog that isn't afraid of checking out new things, or if they see something new that they've never seen before, like a distraction, or let's say if they've never seen a metal bowl before, and they go up to the metal bowl and they're curious and they're all tails wagging, they're happy to see it, they're not freaked out by it. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a metal bowl. I'm just using like an object as an example.
Well, also just people. If they see a large fat guy like myself, that's going to be kind of
who's
scary.
Very photogenic.
Very photogenic, I guess. That's very cool. And
so you're saying that if you want a dog that is bold, and I think that you need to be a little bit more of a qualified trainer with and knowing what you're doing. So if you pick the puppy that climbs out of that puppy pen first, if the one that goes up to almost any object he wants to know about right away, sort of pushes ahead of the others, and they can be very friendly, but they're doing things first and they're unafraid, and they are taking these challenges that others are not willing to take. Now you're talking about Leo, who's a trainer who is also into competing with the dog in things like Schutzen, right? Okay, so that's the dog you want. Now, but pet dogs. So you're the family with a couple little kids. That is not the dog that you want.
Absolutely.
You want the dog that might wait just a minute. And I remember years ago being said, never pick the shyest puppy. I don't always think the shyest puppy is a bad puppy to pick. Sometimes it's just when you have a gentle family and small children.
Yes.
And I also think you always want people who are willing to learn. That puppy can be an okay puppy, but it's got to be somebody who's willing to do handling and not like a super busy, rowdy house. But, the middle puppy who will come up to you, but maybe just takes a minute. And
that's why I said earlier, I really think it's important to talk to people in the profession before you go out picking, because like you said, we usually pick by emotion, and that may not be the right key.
And then it's also the one that you kind of like. I love that one. It's how you pick people. Like, I know, but that's the one I really, really like. So maybe balance that out a little
bit. And kind of going like what Cindy was saying. Dogs like Malinois and certain shepherds and all that kind of stuff, they aren't meant to be pet dogs. And I actually have a foster puppy right now, and he's a little border collie mix, and he's like the perfect example of a good family dog. He is a working dog, but and the nice thing about it though, chances are he's going to end up going to a pet home. And my job right now, or what I'm trying to do, is I'm giving him, I'm pretty much just training him like a family dog. So I let him hang around the living room with me with a leash on. So if we need to stop any bad behaviors, we can. But
let me ask you one other question.
He just got into a training.
I'm sorry. I know.
No, it's wonderful. It's wonderful.
No, it's good. And we'll do that in just a minute when we come to the second segment. But I just want to ask you, we had a session on aggression.
Okay.
And Cindy, or either one of you can speak to this. Do you feel like that puppy that's jumping and biting the other puppies, can you determine aggression early on and look at that puppy and go, in a group of 3 or 4 or 5 puppies, this one looks like he might be, well, more suited to you for your breed. But generally, is that something you can actually pick up?
Sort of. There is, this is actually probably more theory than it is actual fact, but that's like the puppy that you see at about 7 weeks, and when I say 7 weeks, I mean 49 days, is the puppy is the dog that you will see later on in terms of structure, size, personality. That does not always hold true.
Yeah.
But it is at least it's worth looking at as a beginning of an indicator. So if you've got a super bold puppy that, I mean, I don't even know if people do this anymore, but we used to do these control exercises, and you lay them down on your side and they have to stay there until they stop fighting. And I think there's camps that don't do that anymore. I happen to really like that exercise. But you can see some puppies will go, oh, okay, fine.
Yeah.
You're your boss. And some puppies go, you're not going to make me lay down under any circumstances.
Exactly.
I don't care what you do. And that puppy, you know, is going to give you a run for your money in terms of be pushy and be very bold and brave.
I completely agree.
I know, it's fine. So, and the final statement we'll make, and then we'll break for just a few moments, but is that, again, emphasize, try and see the parents of the puppies you're looking at if it's possible, and interview your people, do your due diligence, and I think that's the safest way. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to come right back and continue talking about puppy training more specifically. This is Dr. Doug Pernikoff, Cindy Vickers, and Leo, I'm not even going to try, Hasanaj from Kennelwood.
Was that right?
No, that was perfect.
That was perfect. Okay. I can learn. I'm able to be taught. But we'll be right back with Dr. Doug's All Things Animal. We'll see you in just a moment.
They call him Flipper, faster than lightning. No one you see.
Welcome back. It's Dr. Doug Pernikoff, Cindy Vickers, and Leo Hasanaj from Kennelwood. And we began our discussion talking about how to select a puppy. And we're going to move on now to the more important meat of this subject is, once you have this puppy now, how are we going to prepare the home to start before the puppy gets there maybe?
Yep.
How do we prepare the family for the puppy? Or we can just talk about whatever you want regarding training. I just got this evil look from Cindy. Yeah, boring. So you know what? Cindy, why don't you lead into this segment?
Well,
and I'll just shut up.
Well, wait, I think, you know what? There's 2 questions I want to ask. And one of them is Doug and I have have totally different camps on this. So I'd like to hear what you have to say.
Okay.
But first, let me just ask that one
Okay.
first. So I think that we are all in agreement that it's a very good idea if you have a puppy to have a crate for them.
Yes.
Yes.
What size do you think that crate should be in relationship to the size of your puppy?
So I always recommend when people get their puppies and everything like that, I recommend a smaller crate in the beginning because you're going to be, I feel like you're going to be less prone to having potty accidents. You know what I mean?
Inside the crate.
Inside the crate. And then again, I do kind of think that it kind of depends on the dog too. Because there will be dogs out there that are anxious when they're in the crate, and they're just kind of naturally like that, and they're just kind of genetically a little bit more anxious than usual. So when they're in a crate or when they're away from mom and dad for a little bit, they whine and cry, and they don't do as great. And then you take them out the crate, and it's like they're perfect. And
Even at 7 to 8 weeks when they're just coming into
some of them. And I will say that's really rare that I've found that, but there are some dogs out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But for the majority of the part, I always tell people use a crate because it's in the same sense. It's just like a baby in a crib. You wouldn't let a 3-month-old wander around the house
without
unsupervised.
diapers.
Exactly.
Right.
Yep.
But do you think that they should have just enough room to stand up and move around, or do you think the crate should be bigger? Which would you recommend?
I would base it off the dog. So I would maybe try it out bigger. If I see them have an accident, I might make it smaller.
Okay.
Yeah, so what I tell people is, and I guess this is where we differ, but I would say you can get if you know the breed or the animal is going to probably get large, you can get a bigger crate to begin with, but then just kill the dead space with
like a
something,
divider.
either cardboard wall or whatever, because I always liken them to being in a den a wild carnivore. And I'm always thinking, well, the wild carnivore is kind of wedged in, and that's a normal evolutionary kind of issue.
Yeah.
And they're not likely to make a mess in that setting. Of course, they also have their mother cleaning them, and these puppies no longer.
And the ability to leave it whenever
Yes.
they can get out
Yeah.
of it. They're not like closed in it. I just haven't. I used to tell people that, or I used to think that, but I have just noticed over time that it doesn't seem to make any difference if they have space. I don't. I think they're fine. They're not going to be in a huge crate, but I'm saying they could actually get up and move and easily stand up. I don't think it's really particularly helpful in housebreaking, and I have never had a problem housebreaking a dog in my entire life. To give them a little bit more space. And I also think that for people who are having such issues about putting their dog in the crate, they're just a little bit more likely to be willing to put them in a crate. And I think the end of the day, the most important thing is to be willing to keep a puppy that's not supervised in a crate until
Yes.
they're trustworthy. So I think they'll get housebroken either way.
But you would agree that, I have people that want to just put potty pads in the kitchen on the floor, tape them down. I thought that was horrible because my attitude was they're not going to differentiate where the workspace is to go and do their business versus where they can just have an accident.
Well, I think
anywhere.
if you want to get your dog housebroken and you don't want them to chew on wires or learn really bad habits, you're going to use a crate. But that also means that you have an absolute responsibility not just leave your puppy in the crate all the time.
Right,
I mean, the
agree
crate
with
is
that.
when you can't watch them because you want to keep them safe and you don't want them to learn. It's really hard to unlearn chewing furniture and wandering around the house and going to the bathroom all over your house if that's the norm.
I still do all those
You
things.
know, and
I'm working on it, though.
and they pull all the carpeting up.
So that's an interesting
Well,
point.
so my other question is then, what are the most three important things you think you should do in terms of training a dog when you get a new puppy? Your top three.
And can you put that into a time relationship
Yeah.
sequence?
So, just going back, crate training, like Cindy was saying, I cannot tell you how hard it is once dogs get in a routine of chewing stuff up, having potty accidents around the house, because like you said before, and I do agree with you, like, I think if that option to make the crate bigger for people, I think it would make people feel more comfortable placing their dog in the kennel, because like you said before, a lot of people just, I think, have that kind of, I feel bad for him, but at the same time, a year later from now, you're going to be coming to me and you're going to be like, he keeps on having potty accidents. He's chewing up my shoes.
Or they're not coming to you. They're just like, my son has allergies.
Yeah.
Just like, I don't want to deal with this dog.
Before you continue,
Yeah.
one good question. I get this asked all the time. How many hours can I leave my puppy in a crate? And, I show people live with their dogs in the crate a lot of times.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I know it's hard for
they
a
don't always
younger
have a
dog.
really great life, though.
No, I know, but
Yeah.
it's like, okay, well, if we're going to train our puppy to not make a mess all night long, and he goes to bed at 10 or he goes into his crate at 10 and he wakes up at 6, I mean, that's a long time. So
It is.
couldn't you rationalize that same length of time would work during a working day for parents?
Leo, you take that first, and I'll give you my opinion.
I mean, a little bit. I mean, a lot of times what I tell people, because I have people coming to me all the time, well, we work throughout the day and the puppy's in the crate sometimes for 6-8 hours. And I'll tell people exactly what I feel about it. I mean, don't expect your dog not to have an accident or not to freak out.
Right.
And it's really important that if you have that kind of schedule, and going back to what we talked about earlier, picking the right puppy for you, if you know you physically can't be there to help that puppy out in the beginning stage, which is the most important part of its life in the beginning, then, consider taking other motives. That's the nice thing about bringing them to a place like Kennelwood, where we have daycare training, so they're doing something throughout the day.
That's a really good idea.
Yeah.
Or we have people that we've met on the show that they go into the home and they help with those kind of functions.
That too, yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, Kennelwood's great because you're getting socialization.
Yep.
And that's another question. What is it, 9 to 11 weeks when they really start to be peaking their social activities, or no?
Well, you have till 16 weeks. The critical period of socialization, especially to socialize them to different things, is around 16 weeks. And if you miss it, you miss it. You can't go back and fix that. However, I have seen dogs that are in a terrible space in terms. I mean, a dog that I had for quite a while, I only took her to try to get her more adoptable, and she was afraid of. If a leaf moved, she would bolt. And she made dramatic improvements. But you don't need to have to go through all that if you just socialize them early. And so can we just table that for 1 second? Because I think the socialization thing is a huge subject that
I want to hear how you guys do
it.
But just in terms of how long can they be in a crate, ideally, if you have somebody who come into your house and take your dog out once or twice a day when they're a puppy, that would be great. If you have the resources to take your dog to Kennelwood, I mean, perfect. But everybody doesn't. So the thing is, would it be better if you could get your dog out a few times during the day? Yes. But if it's the difference between the dog not having a home and having a home with people that work, you don't have a choice. The dog has to stay in a crate, or you could have a crate with a pen that extends so the dog could go in and out. I think it takes a little bit longer to get them potty trained, but if that makes you feel better, that's great. Some people manage to run home during lunch just to get that dog out, and they can handle that. I tell people also, if their dog is going to be crated all day, which I believe that they should, then you could move to a pen or include a pen when they get a little bit older, if they can't get out of it. But once they're housebroken and they sleep, if that dog wants to sleep in bed with you because they're in the crate all day, I'm like, go for it. It's just like 8 free hours.
Just like my kids, if they wanted to jump in bed, we were cool.
I was too.
That's very good.
So the socialization thing.
So go on. We
take it away.
So with socialization, I really like that you guys brought it up, because a lot of times I think people get this misconception that socialization is interacting with everything and, every person, every dog. And that's important, but socialization is also about exposure. And exposure is so important with puppies, like Cindy was saying, from around 8 to 16 weeks, because if they're just exposed to environments, to sounds, to people, and again, it'll obviously depend. Like if let's say I was like banging frying pans together and the puppy was freaking out, I'm not going to continue to, you know what I mean?
Sure.
But we're going to go we're going to go as ready as we are as the dog's ready. You know what I mean?
Well, how do you define that? I'm a little confused. So, go ahead.
So I meant just like a puppy's, temperament, their general temperament. Like let's say if it was just naturally a little bit more skittish and stuff like that, then I'm going to start it pretty slow. You know what I mean? I'm going to start off.
Does that mean socializing? Do you mean getting them out in public spaces? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Getting them out in public spaces, going to, places like, and I'm not like Home Depot or Lowe's, Petco, all that fun stuff. But I also do think that, like I said, I think people confuse socialization for having to interact with
directly.
Everything. Exactly. And just even being around a new area is awesome. Just because,
that's just changing, making change more familiar, and so the dog is more adaptable.
Well, I want to say something I think is important about that. But before I do, from your point of view as a vet, like when is it safe to take your puppy out?
Well, we like to believe that as long as they've had a couple of their vaccines, and that's usually at 3 week intervals starting from 6 to 8 weeks. I think if they've had 1 or 2 good vaccines and they've had them for several days, that's okay. But there is a big error. People, what they'll do is they'll get the vaccine, they'll run over to the Petco and walk around, and there's no way that dog is protected adequately. So although for up until about 16 weeks, the mother's immune system through nursing is providing that protection. We're at just a short moment. We're going to break away and come back. But so, I would say that you have to be responsible to that. I don't think that people get educated well enough about that.
No, and I think there's something important. Should I hold it about socialization?
Yeah, let's come right back because we're about to break here again, and we'll come back very quickly. And once again, Dr. Doug's All Things Animal and our wonderful guest, Leo. We'll be back in just a moment, and thanks so much for listening.
We know Flipper lives in a world full of wonder, lying there under the sea.
Hello, I'm Mr. Ed.
A horse is a horse, of course, and no one can talk to a horse, of course. That is, of course.
Welcome back to our third segment of Dr. Doug's All Things Animal. And we have been having a really interesting discussion about puppy training, puppy selection. And when we just left off, Cindy was going to begin talking a little bit more about socialization and training. So go ahead.
Well, I don't think we quite finished this with Leo, but if I'd say what's your top three things, you said housebreaking, socialization. What's your third?
And the third, I mean, for me, it's so hard to say, but I think the biggest thing is just learning impulse control. And that's so
I need that training.
So I want to go back to that, but I want to say something about my thoughts about socialization, because I think it's a big deal and it makes a huge difference in kind of the mental, emotional health of your dog and the ease of working with the dog and having a happy dog in your family. So I kind of think that the interaction is actually very important, because socializing your dog, in my mind, means introducing them to such a variety of things that new things aren't completely intimidating and cause them to become very stressed. So how you handle the dog with that interaction, I think, is what's key. So I would want them to see places, sounds, people, and
critters,
and other dogs in particular, or the animals that they might come in contact with if you are planning to have a cat or you have a bird.
Yeah.
And so when they're a puppy, you generally let them see it, and you don't force them, like by grabbing their collar and pulling them up to the other dog, or pulling them up to that metal boulder they're not sure about. But one of the things that we always did, and it was kind of a joke when I was at Kennelwood, so you're walking down the street with your puppy and there's a black trash bag and the dog's like, "Ee! This is horrible, what is that thing?" And you go up to the thing and you kind of touch it, and the dog's like at the end of the leash, and you just sort of have a little conversation or talk to the plastic bag until the dog's willing to. I know you look.
And the rest of us think you're nuts.
Exactly. But when the dog walks up to it and sniffs it, then you'll go, "Oh, what a good puppy!" And you do that several times, and the dog then sees when they can come up on their own and investigate it on their own and see that nothing terrible happened here. All is well, and then you would walk past that trash bag 2 or 3 more times, the puppy just trotting alongside, and you go, "This is cool." So that's one thing that's out of the way, and you do that with every new thing. The vacuum cleaner, men, children, so that they don't, see, well, it's okay if I see women, but if I see a man, I lose my business.
What if you see a man dressed as a woman?
Again, you have to bring those in. You have to have all kinds of people. All kinds of people.
Is great. So
old men with white beards.
Yeah, oh my God, that are photogenic.
Yes, unfortunately.
So Leo, go ahead. And where do you take these clients now through the Kennelwood process?
Yeah.
How are you helping them move forward and transitioning back into a home setting?
So that's the most important part of our whole training program, and I really like to specify that with people is, your dog is gonna, they're gonna look awesome at Kennelwood. That's cool, but obviously we want them listening at home just as much. So what I always end up doing, I do lessons. I usually try and do 2 lessons with each person, and even then, would I say that's enough? And I think maybe it depends on the person, you know what I mean? But it's enough time for me to work with you and to show you, and also watch you work your dog and interact with your dog, because there's a lot of stuff that goes into it that people normally don't see at first, and it's important that we take the time. Especially whoever you're training with, you take the time to ask that person as many questions as you need to, and I feel people don't ask as many questions as they should. And around the 3rd or 4th week, if people do a training program with me, I tend to do an in-home lesson.
Oh, great.
And that's and for that reason, because I know these, you know what I mean? Kids are going to behave different at home than they are at school. It's the same thing with puppies. I go to the house and I look at their setup. We talk about maybe where can we place our little climb bed. We work on me knocking on the door, where we can place our dog, all this kind of stuff. And that's really important too, because like I said, I think once people see a routine or they see it in their own environment, it becomes a lot easier for them to implement the training a lot more, rather than just, coming back and just like everybody else who's gone through a program, they're like, well, he's still jumping at home, he's still doing this, that, or and I think it's important that, just if you can, taking the time to go out to the house and doing some kind of lesson so you can see their natural environment, you can see how the owner responds too.
How
and work
about
with them more there?
How about follow-up? Does Kennelwood provide like a follow-up either by phone or, if I buy a car, I never hear from the guy after he was my best friend until I write the check. But with a training thing like this, are you trying to build like a community atmosphere? So if you have been trained at Kennelwood, your dog, that you want to bring those people back as part of your family, is that right? Or
yeah. I mean, we always, I always love the puppies who start off with me like at 9 weeks or 10 weeks old, and then a year later they're still with me. And I love seeing that progression. I love seeing the owners progress because they learn so much throughout that time with me, and it's really rewarding too because. I've had, what was it? I had, back when I worked at our St. Peter's location, there was this one golden doodle. His name was Jackson, and he was like 4 months old. And the first time I met him we had Santa photos, and I was dressed like an elf. And I see the parents and the owners, and I see Jackson, and he's like pulling on the leash, and you couldn't tell he's a golden doodle, but because he's all like fluff. But and I'm like, okay, come on down, and Jackson's just running around, and his parents, they're really nice people, and they're really good friends of mine now. But I wasn't too sure about them because they didn't seem too sure about Jackson, and so I gave him my card afterwards. I'm like, hey, if you're interested in any training, please contact me. And they came back a month later. And he did pretty much a year of training with me. And the first part, these parents were so kind of like nervous, and because this is kind of like their first dog, and they asked me a ton of questions, and they always thought they were being annoying. And I'm like, no, this is good. And they educated themselves so much, and they handled them so well. We got a CGC when he was, it's called a Canine Good Citizen.
Sure.
We got it when he was around 9-10 months old.
Those are the top 10 things you're supposed to do?
Well,
right?
the 10 training exercises that if you do them, then you're a good dog.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, technically.
As opposed to a horrible dog.
I'm a good Doug. I haven't been through any training specifically.
But it was around that time, and then his dad came to me the next week and was just, in tears because he was just, they had this idea that they would never be able to control him and manage him. And seeing people come back each time and trusting you with this information and trusting you with their dog, I mean, it's really rewarding, and it's really nice to see how much Jackson has progressed since the first time I saw him. So,
so what do you do about puppy biting? How do you teach a puppy not to bite?
That's a good one.
Now, I think it all depends on the trainer. Personally, so like with my foster puppy, I'm not too hard on it. If it's like little, I got him when he was 8 weeks old, and if he's like nibbling on me, I'm okay with it. But then there comes a point like now, it's been a week now, and now he's a lot more comfortable with me. So one thing with puppy biting, what I like to do is I like to redirect. He bites on my hand, buddy, hey man, no, here's this chew toy, or here's this little, like rope toy, kind of just showing up and then playing him with it. You know what I mean? And just really quick, I just want to bring something up. A lot of people ask me, if I play tug with my dog, is that creating aggression?
I had that.
Oh, really? And personally...
I hope not, because I've been doing it with all my friends.
Yeah, like I said, personally, no. I mean, if you think about it, if you're playing tug of war with somebody and there's nobody on the end of that line, is it going to be a lot of fun? Not really.
Right.
And I think it's a nice way you're interacting with your dog and you're engaging with them, but you're also like, hey, this toy is a ton of fun now instead of my hand or my shoe. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, yeah.
I think one thing that I want to say about tug of war is that
She stutters.
When they're little, you have, I know. It just came up, but sometimes these things just come on. You have to be careful about their teeth, that you don't get too rough, so you pull your teeth out. But I also think it's a very good training opportunity. And you can let the dog win occasionally, but you want to win sometimes. But more than win, it's an opportunity for you to teach, drop it, or give, or whatever word you want.
That's true. Yeah.
Yes, and then in the response to them opening their mouth and giving it to you, give it back. So they're willing to let go of it and you give it back.
It's a game.
Tug of war is a game, and it's a way to learn. I don't have to run away from somebody, and I don't have to take this toy and run with it. And one other thing you can do from biting, which redirect is probably number one.
Yeah.
But with puppies, sometimes you can just end the play and get up and not look at them at all.
Yes.
And then you wait a little bit and you come back. And it can get to the point where you actually leave the room if you can trust them for like 30 seconds.
That's like putting my kids, if they're getting over rambunctious, I used to say, time to go have a rest in your room. And I'd come back and I'd say, do you understand why?
Yeah.
But I had one other question about this transitioning in. I know I have a lot of people come to me with their new pets or their adopted pets, and they go, the puppy is attacking my children, and the children get freaked. And to me, I tell them, well, the puppy looks at your child as one of his litter mates, and this is normal for him as a carnivore and a hunter. Evolutionarily, I think they like to interact that way because it teaches them, works them towards a training that would be normal for them in their natural history.
Yeah.
So, but how do you? I mean, I think that's a parent thing that they don't understand all the time, is how to control the kid around the dog.
It's hard. It's really hard.
And especially with, if you have a 6-year-old who naturally is energetic too, you know what I mean?
And they grab it.
And they do all these things that you're not supposed to do. So there's a lot of, at that point, especially if you're a parent, there's a lot of management, but there's also a lot of working together with the kid. And just like with puppies, a lot of consistency and persistency with the kid, just as well as your puppy. Because I always, what I like to do is, when I have like kids and stuff involved with the family and we're training, I always kind of I work with the kid a little bit, and then it's almost like a tricycle. I'm holding the leash onto them, but I'm having them hold the leash too. So we're walking the dog, and slowly I kind of put myself away from the picture. And then I usually end it when I know the dog's at a good point mentally, like training wise, that he's doing good and the kid's doing good, and then we always end on a good note. But
I just want to end the segment and say that you're great. That a shock collar on the child is very, very useful. Well, we've had a wonderful discussion, and Leo Hasanaj from Kennelwood, Kennelwood.com. We're going to be back in just a moment for our kind of recap. And Cindy, thanks so much for guiding us in this training session. And we'll be right back. Thanks so much.
Unless he has something to say. A horse is a horse, of course, of course. And this one will talk to his voice is hoarse. You never heard of a talking horse? Well, listen to this. I am Mr. Ed.
So brave is Corporal Rusty, though he is just a boy. How true is Private Rin Tin Tin, they are the Army's pride and joy.
Well, welcome back, everybody. This is the final little recap segment of Dr. Doug's All Things Animal. We've had a really interesting show, I believe. Our special guest once more, Leo Hasanaj from Kennelwood. And for anyone that's interested in looking into Kennelwood for services or training, you want to go to Kennelwood.com. And they, again, offer boarding, daycare, grooming, and training in particular.
Barding?
My kids always make fun of me. I don't know where I got that accent. But anyway, so I just wanted to, in recap, I think the most important thing everybody would agree is that, when you're going to pick and select a puppy, you try and do good due diligence and make that puppy fit into, make sure you're picking something that's going to fit into your home. And then getting involved in a training program initially. And I think it's always good to work with a program like Kennelwood because they're going to give you good basic foundation training that's going to last and influence the dog for the rest of his life. So that's really important. Did you want to summarize any point with the training, Cindy?
No, but I think that for sure with a puppy, you want to get them socialized, you want to get them housebroken, and I like to teach them to follow you. So there's a few little things that you want to do, but socializing and housebreaking is really very critical in those early days. And like you said, just make sure that you know what will be involved with the dog. I mean, in terms of
the
grooming
reality
and care and
cost,
space.
commitment. And again, these animals now are living longer and longer. So
because they come to you.
Yes, so thank you. You're so kind.
Yeah.
So I know that Cindy had an event to share with us.
I do, and it happens to be at Kennelwood Pet Resorts at the location that Leo's at. So this is called the Spring Slobberfest. And my friend Sue Schultz, who is also a trainer at Kennelwood, I think is very involved with making this happen, and it sounds like a blast. Saturday, May 13th from 11 to 3, and the South County Kennelwood location, again, is at 10626 Baptist Church Road. There will be adoptable dogs there. There will be free pet ID tags. They're going to do the canine good citizen testing. There's free pet trick lessons. There's free hot dogs. You can win a $50 Kennelwood gift certificate. Oh, there's a whole other.
Away?
There's like, I think, German Shepherd puppies that will be available for adoption. There's like 3.
Can I say something
really
quick about that?
2 things.
So there will be, I think there might be a Great Dane rescue there too.
Oh, okay.
But there's also this rescue that I've just been working with. They're called Speak, and they're a Border Collie Australian Shepherd rescue, and
cool.
they deal a lot with dogs with disabilities. So the dogs are deaf and blind. And
what'd you say? I'm so funny. Wow.
But
that sounds like a great event. So we're going to make sure, and we'll repeat that next week too, because we have a couple of weeks before that happens. Well, I just want to thank everybody again. If people need help with training, you certainly approach Kennelwood and look for people like Leo. They have a number of trainers. Cindy is always available at 636-530-1808. And if you need to reach us at our clinic, it's www.clarksonwilsonvet.com. And I want to thank everybody again, Leo, you in particular, and Cindy, of course, you. And we will be back next week with another interesting topic, and we're going to make it a surprise. See you later.
Bye-bye.
From all the tales of the West, we'll remember best Corporal Rusty and Private Rin Tin Tin.